Welcome back from that short break. Here we are talking about the newly signed tax bill and the Dangote initiative of CNG boys about 4,000 trucks to distribute PMS across Nigeria. Prof. Ken Ife is here with me. Prof, a very good day to you, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
All right, good afternoon. So, Prof, let's get down to this discussion right now. I knew since last week we have been trying to make sure that we get into the dissection of this particular latest development around Nigerian economy. First, the signing of the tax reform bills who have now become a law in Nigeria. What is your expectation?
No, it's actually a game-changing bill because the previous one predates Nigerian independence and is so anachronistic because you have a tax regime that is taxing poverty, taxing investment, taxing capital expenses. And then also, apart from that, it is not progressive. And it has all kinds of things there, like inheritance tax, the things, is killing the golden goose that lays the egg. So it is important that we reform that bill. And that tax bill has been completely revamped. And it has been done in such a way that it is not only progressive, but it removes all the burden that it has on MSMEs. For example, there are about 60 taxes, only 6 of them contribute 95% of the revenue. So what are you doing with the other 55? You're just using it to strangulate businesses. It also removes discretion. It reduces discretion from the president and governor because they always award the tax-free rebate, this, that, and the exemption and all. They remove all those discretion. Bringing in the State House of Assembly and then the National Assembly to look at any attempts to try to bring in any new waiver. And then actually moves that waiver away from everybody and anybody to the core high growth industry and critical real sector where they are needed. And then it also goes around and reduces the company income tax from 30% to 25%, and progressively is going to go down to 20%, which is a very big signal to foreign investors that you don't come in, we're going to do business with you. Then all these agents that are collecting tax, all these things, they just got rid of all of that. So there's going to be a lot of leakages plugged by this particular Reform Act. And people then it comes and does something very interesting. It promotes growth in the economy. And how does it do that? It targets the consumers. There are 4 constructs in GDP. You have household consumption, you have investment, and this investment tends to come from companies anyway, SMEs and all that. Then you have public consumption, which is about 7 to 8%. Household is about 78%, 74 to 78%. Then you have investment, and then you also have balance of payment. Our balance of payment has moved from negative to positive to the removal of the subsidy. We now have over $6.8 billion positive balance of payment. But now what it does to household is that the tax came and removed all those taxes on education, on health services, on food, all those areas where the low-income earner are made to bleed. So they've now freed them from those. Now, giving them more disposable income and cash means that they can actually buy more products with those monies. And that means aggregate output aggregate consumption will increase. That increases GDP. On the other hand, the 42 million MSMEs are getting a good deal because they're not going to worry about whether they paid VAT or not from the threshold of 25 million going up to 50 million. So they will now enjoy conserving a lot of their cash, and they will use it to stop redundancy, to create more employment, and then to invest in more output. Aggregate output will increase. And the government consumption is always increasing anyway because they go and borrow money anywhere and everywhere.
All right.
So all of those 4 signals are positive.
Exactly. Prof, let's quickly look at one of the key aims and one of the key objectives of this tax, to bring about fairer and efficient tax system. A lot of Nigerians have been critically looking at this particular goal, fairer and efficient tax system, from the new tax law? In your own view, how are we going to achieve that fairer and efficient tax system that this law is bringing?
Well, what I've been describing to you is to say the benefits that come from that. There is more fairness when you look at the progressive nature of the tax as it affects both the individuals. For example, it removes inheritance tax. 2, it gives exemption to the armed forces and to agribusiness. Again, that is increasing productivity at the lowest level, and food security gets a big boost from that. Then it also removes all these middlemen that are compounding everybody's problem. And then in terms of what you can pay, there are areas that is exempt. 30% of the poor earners are exempted completely. Then also it has a pressure valve that if your rent is up to 200,000 naira, you get an exemption. So if you have NIN, can you imagine now when that promotes people getting NIN? Because once you get NIN, BVN, all of that brings you to the tax net. So pushing you from informal to formal trade. So, and then, there's a lot of incentive there that makes it workable and at the same time useful. And I tell you one thing too, it promises from the tax administration point of view to bring in more automation. Let me tell you how automation has helped Lagos State. Lagos State has a very complex but accessible automation system where they tell individuals, everybody, go and do self-assessment, assess yourself. And then automatically, as you assess yourself, make your entry, it will issue you tax clearance certificate based on what you have declared is your tax income. You do it for the first year, do it for the second year, maybe at the third year, a tax officer will come for a review. He will sit with you and they will go through your submission. And then he wants to prove to you that you've been underpaying. He can refer you to 1 or 2 companies that are in your region doing the same thing you are doing, and that they're actually paying 3 times more tax than you are doing. Then it will be apologies from you and all of that. You now begin to remit more tax, otherwise you just fall into default tax penalty. So it is a way of luring people in and collecting eventually far more taxes. Now, I hear people saying that, it's going to reduce government revenue. It doesn't reduce, it increases government revenue, even from day one, because when you are plugging the holes, you are increasing government revenue. Then over a period of 1 or 2 years, the assimilation of the informal and the opportunity for the small ones to grow, they will grow into your tax net where they can pay you more taxes. And there's transparency.
Exactly. Now, Prof, let's also look at another very interesting but a little bit controversial, because people are still finding it difficult on how to understand how this tax law will boost domestic and foreign investment. But from you who have followed this development right from 2023, when Mr. Oyedele was initiated as the presidential committee chairman of that particular group, you have been following them up. But in this regard, this particular boosting domestic and foreign investment is a little bit not clear for many Nigerians to understand. But help us to understand the boosting of domestic and foreign investment via this new tax law that we have.
Apart from insecurity that is pervasive, one major thing that companies consider when they are making investment decisions is the clemency and the enabling environment. And the major one is tax. Can they predict tax? How much tax can they provision in their thing? Many people can't, because you have 60 taxes hitting you left, right, and center, and they're all discretionary. Today you get this, tomorrow they slam one, they're taking you to court, and National Assembly is calling you left, right. That is a big problem for them. So now you have clarity, and then you have predictability on what you are going to pay. You can even see how it says, I'm reducing your corporate income tax from 30% by next year to 25%, and by the next upper year, it will be 20%. They can plan this, and this thing comes to billions and billions of naira for the companies, for these investors. So they want to hear that. And then, of course, the fact that they are not going to be paraded and stampeded by all kinds of agents coming in is another big plus for them. And then they can see how their entire supply chain are moderated by the effect of this new tax reform. So it is not a small thing for them. So it's very, very important, both for domestic investors and also for foreign investors.
Very interesting. Prof, let's now get to another very cheering news that we have been celebrating. Those of us in the corridor of Nigerian economic and financial aspect, we'll be celebrating a little bit of this cheering news coming from Dangote. And we also had another big news coming from him today, this morning. But let's first take the news that we had yesterday, that many Nigerians are also trying to understand what is behind these Dangote freebies. 4,000 CNG tankers coming to distribute fuel across Nigeria to help Nigerians save 1.7 trillion naira yearly. Prof, is Dangote turning to a Father Christmas?
First of all, he's a man that puts his, that follows his word. In other words, he will call it a kueme in Igbo land. That is, he does what he says he's going to do. But we've also lived with a lot of politicians that say what they want to do and never get to do them. Now, what it is this. There is what we call a history of inconsistency, of misalignments, and all kinds of anything that can go wrong in the supply chain, in the fuel distribution, storage, logistics chain. And that is all fueled by corruption of all sorts. You've seen when we had fuel subsidy crisis, and then people were confessing how much they are doing. Some say they send in 30 million liters, and then they eventually record 90 million. There was nothing that could go wrong that didn't go wrong with that fuel distribution crisis that we have, fuel crisis. Then you came for PIB. We struggled for 20 years to get PIB in. Buhari signed it, but the man has tried. Then President Bola Tinubu now came in and is implementing the PIB. Now, when you touch people in their comfort zone, they will put a fight. And that's what you are seeing now. So that corruption that has riddled that sector, that has refused to allow 230 million Nigerians and 42 million MSMEs to enjoy the fruit of our labor, the gift of petroleum that God has given us. Somebody is holding us to ransom. Let me explain how that works. If you go to the gantry, the fuel is coming out at 825 naira. Now, that 825 naira, who gets what in the 825 naira? There are companies that have done the prospecting and that bit, they get something. There's some companies that go in and drill the crude to come to the surface, and then they get something. Then there are transportation of this, either ship bringing it from America or getting it from wherever, or pipeline. They get something. Then the people that now refine it get something. So that thing is sliced up with very, very few pennies and dollars that naira that people get. Now, distributors, middlemen, take this product, instead of putting in extra 50 naira on it or 10 naira, some of them put 200, 300 naira. So look at what they are taking. In rural areas, many of the petrol stations have shut down, they're not getting fuel. And then you carry jerrycan going around 20 kilometers to go and get fuel. They paid 1,250 naira. Somebody there is hiking that price and making a kill. But the people that have made all these investments are struggling to get 50 naira for the segment of their investment. Now that's not. And the thing is that it is also fueled with corruption, because the first job you expected the midstream and downstream PRA to do is to establish the correct quantity of fuel consumed in Nigeria. But they haven't. They haven't even tried to do that. That's their first job. What are we consuming? We know that when we had border closure, suddenly the consumption went down by 30%. And all the states across the ECOWAS region in the sea, all of them were screaming, going up all the way to Senegal. Their price of fuel went up through the roof, showing that Nigeria was actually smuggling these products into them. So it wasn't a doubt. Now, Dangote has come not only to de-risk that sector, that transportation, the logistics sector, de-risk it, to bring trust on that supply chain, and then confidence, so that people can narrow down their margin to something reasonable and transfer that benefit to the 230 million Nigerians and the MSMEs. Why is it important to the MSMEs?
I think I'm coming to that, Prof, I'm coming to that because we have been told by Dangote that 42 million micro, small, medium enterprise are here to benefit from these 4,000 trucks that will be distributing PMS across them. But many Nigerians will be wondering, it's a huge expectation. How is it going to fulfill this to this SMEs?
No, the thing is this. These MSMEs, I want you to understand that we have 42 million MSMEs out of 90 million in Africa. While Nigeria is 15% of 18% of Africa population, our GDP is less than 15%. But our entrepreneurship is 48%, which means that this entrepreneurship, these people who generate 80% of our wealth, that these people and employment, 90% of employment, they are latent comparative advantage for Nigeria. So whatever you do to increase their productivity, their efficiency, ease of access to fuel and affordability of fuel, will have a knock-on effect on our economy. They will boost our economy without a doubt. And how does it do that? If you look at the cost structure of our producers and service providers, about 70% of their input costs actually comes from that energy. It's either the fuel they're using to run their generator. And remember, man carried out a survey of manufacturers, and they say that they use their own power 77% of the time. And now look at the cost to them. Then you have also the use of fuel for vehicles to transport their finished product. All of these add at least 70% to their cost. So when you attenuate that pressure, then it's going to be more profit for them. And also you have to also think about the fact that the issue about affordability and availability hinges on the cost of delivery.
Exactly.
Dangote did not tell the existing retailers that you shouldn't bring your truck to my gantry. You can take your truck there. But when you buy the thing and bring home, you can now count your costs and compare it to if it was to him to drop it for you. Do you understand? So, I still don't understand why people are raising an eyebrow. There's no question of killing competition or monopoly, because he's not even owning retail chains for him to be monopolizing it. He's only in the midstream, where you have NNPC with so many refineries and you have modular refineries propping up every day. So there's no such thing as monopoly. And by the way, this guy is in the free trade zone. He can even afford not to sell a drop of petrol to Nigeria. How much are you giving him? You're only giving 70,000 barrels a day when he has a capacity for 650,000 barrels a day. You haven't even given him up to 100. So why are we screaming? He is cross-subsidizing by importing some of the crude, refining it despite all the cost of transporting them into the country, and he's still selling it to you based on the naira to crude policy. So what is the problem? This is a lifeline for half of the retail stations that have closed down to come back to life, and for the ones that are dead completely to come back to life, for the rural petrol stations to come back to life. So it is a big lifeline, and it is the monopoly of those who have been holding the entire country to ransom in their comfort zone. That is what is discomforting them.
Exactly. Prof, let's also take another very laudable aims of this particular initiative of Dangote. The federal government are also appraised that Dangote, this is a good initiative, particularly looking at how to reduce the cost of energy and bring about enhancement profitability for businesses across Nigeria. It's a good laudable one. And from you, Prof, this reducing cost of energy and profitability is key to businesses. Can you help us to unravel this?
Yes. See, Nigeria has a commitment to global warming, which we call our national determined contribution. Now, our transition fuel for the next 30 years is gas. Because if you look at gas, petrol and all other forms of energy have a lot of carbon in them. Some are carbon 10, carbon 8, 9. But for methane, it's only one carbon. So we are achieving substantial drop in carbon and at the same time using the natural resources that we have. But look at the dilemma of the presidential CNG initiative. Look at their dilemma. How much money do they have to invest in CNG vehicles, in CNG infrastructure, and all of that? When all the benefits coming from removing fuel subsidy, NNPs trapped half of it. That was World Bank. They trapped 50% of the money, and we are burning it in their inefficient operation. Apart from taking $3 billion or more at the beginning of this administration, which they got approval from Buhari, to go and securitize our crude with Afrexim Bank and securitize gas, taking these monies in advance, and yet not delivering any PMS. All they are doing here is that they shouted at all these gimmicks. I'm asking the president to go and visit these two refineries to see where they have spent those $3 billion. Go and visit. He has visited them. Go and visit them to see what, because I know some of the engineers are screaming that if the president ever comes to their factory, to that end, the refinery, that he's going to be ashamed. So we have to unravel those. You can't talk about monopoly when NNPC is on the upstream, is on the midstream refining, and then also downstream selling petrol. What is he doing? Is you are not selling your petrol because you're not producing petrol. Why you have to sell those stations? Because it doesn't make sense. And the Dangote you're talking about doesn't even have petrol stations that will say, oh, it's trying to muscle everybody. It's not muscling anybody out. It hasn't asked the people using tanker not to come and collect. So what is going on? It's lifeline, which people are not taking advantage. And I want to tell you something. 1.7 trillion divided by 230 million Nigerians. Every Nigerian is getting a handout of 7,400 naira. Now, if you look at Nigerian household, you say that each household, father and mother and 4 children, that's a household of 6. It means about 50 million households in Nigeria. Each household is getting 42,000 naira rebate on fuel. Then you look at businesses, 42 million MSMEs, each one is getting 40,000 naira. So this is not a joke. And let me tell you where it hits the most. We have mission critical industries and service providers whose life depend on the availability and affordability of this fuel. You have the airports. They must run 24/7. How many times have you been in the airport and the light went off? Look at the hospital in the middle of operation, the light goes off. Look at hotels. I know hotels that consume 3-4 drums, over 1,000 liters a day. Think about how much it is. It's over 1 million. Then you look at other people like educational institutions, universities. These are the people that need the availability of power. Their engines suffer because of the poor quality of adulterated fuel being given to them. Some of them have to have 4 generators, 3 not working. What is doing happening? Because they are importing fuel that don't meet the requirement. Now, there are about 11 things you measure. You have the fuel pour point, flash point, density, specific gravity, sulfur content, octane number. NNPC does not have a recognized international laboratory throughout their existence with all the money they're burning that can actually check the quality and confirm. According to PIA law, neither is the midstream agency and the downstream agency. It doesn't have. Only Dangote has.
Prof.
And his quality of his products meet E5 and E6, Euro 5 and Euro 6 standards. Exactly. Highest international standards. That's why America is buying from him. Saudi Arabia, all these African countries are buying from him.
Exactly. Prof, we have to leave
what are we coming to? What is the war turning into?
Prof, we have to leave it here for today because I know this is a developing story, it's a developing initiative from Dangote. August 15 is the D-Day that all this talk will be running around Nigeria. And I hope we'll have you on set so that we can dissect the development going forward. But we want to appreciate you for coming on the show today, Prof.
Thank you.